The crystalline walls of the temporal observatory hummed with an energy that made Captain Elena Moss's teeth ache. She stood before the massive viewing portal, watching swirls of time itself dance across the transparent surface like aurora in deep space. Behind her, the alien scientists of the Kronos Collective worked frantically at their instruments, their forearms moving in perfect synchronization as they calibrated the temporal sensors. "The readings are impossible," whispered Dr. Vex, the lead temporal physicist. His gray skin had taken on a sickly blue tinge, a sure sign of distress among his species. "The timeline fracture originated from your homeworld, Captain." From a single human voice. Elena turned away from the portal, her jaw set with determination. "Show me." The holographic display materialized between them, showing Earth as it had been 3 days ago. The planet appeared normal at first glance, but Elena could see the subtle distortions rippling outward from a single point in what had once been downtown Chicago. The fracture lines spread like cracks in glass, growing stronger with each passing hour. "The temporal shockwave began here," Dr. Vex explained, his voice trembling with scientific fascination and existential dread. "One human, we believe it was a female child, spoke a single word that somehow resonated across the quantum foam of spacetime itself." Elena's breath caught. "A child? What did she say?" "We don't know. The word was lost in the initial cascade. But the effects..." Dr. Vex gestured helplessly at the display. "Captain, in the 73 years since the collective first encountered humanity, we've documented over 16,000 supposedly impossible feats performed by your species. But this defies everything we understand about the nature of reality." The display shifted, showing the progression of the temporal fracture. Elena watched in horror as the crack spread beyond Earth, consuming the Sol system, then reaching out toward the nearest star systems. Each world it touched began to flicker, as if reality itself couldn't decide which version of history to maintain. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. "At current propagation rates, the fracture will reach the collective's core worlds in 18 hours, if we cannot contain it." Dr. Vex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of profound sadness among his kind. "The entire galaxy will be caught in an endless loop of temporal resets. Every moment of progress, every life saved, every bond forged between our species, it will all be undone, over and over, for eternity." Elena felt the weight of countless civilizations settling on her shoulders. The Kronos Collective had been humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and despite the initial fear and mistrust, they had become something precious: friends, allies, partners in exploring the vast mysteries of the universe. The thought of losing that connection, of watching it dissolve into temporal chaos, made her chest tight with grief. "There has to be something we can do," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some way to fix this." Dr. Vex's expression softened with something that might have been hope. "Perhaps. But it would require a human to enter the fracture at its point of origin. The quantum signature is specifically attuned to your species' neural patterns. Only a human mind could navigate the temporal storm and find the source." Elena nodded without hesitation. "Then I'll go." "Captain," Dr. Vex reached out with one of his 4 hands, gently touching her arm. "The probability of survival is essentially 0. The fracture's a maelstrom of colliding timelines. You would experience every possible version of your existence simultaneously. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you." Elena smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of human determination spreading through her chest. "Dr. Vex, my friend, that's exactly what makes us human. We don't calculate the odds, we just do what needs to be done." The temporal insertion chamber resembled a metallic cocoon, its walls lined with quantum processors that hummed with barely contained energy. Elena lay strapped to the central platform, her body covered in sensors that would monitor her vital signs during the impossible journey ahead. Through the transparent dome above her, she could see Dr. Vex and his team making final adjustments to the equipment. The neural interface will allow you to maintain some semblance of coherent thought, Dr. Vex explained through the chamber's communication system. But Captain, you must understand, once you enter the fracture, you'll be experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. Past, present, and future will become meaningless concepts. Elena tested the straps holding her down, more out of habit than any desire to escape. How will I know which timeline is the original? How will I find the source? Look for the constant, came the reply from Dr. Vane, the collective's theoretical physicist. In chaos theory, there's always an invariant something that remains, stable even as everything else changes. Find what stays the same across all timelines, and you'll find your way home. The chamber began to glow with an eerie blue light. Elena felt the familiar sensation of temporal displacement beginning to take hold, a kind of vertigo that started in her bones and worked its way outward. She had experienced it before during standard time jumps, but this was different. This felt like being pulled apart and reassembled at the quantum level. Beginning insertion in 3.2.1. Reality exploded into fragments. Elena found herself standing in a Chicago that existed in 7 different centuries simultaneously. Skyscrapers of glass and steel occupied the same space as log cabins and futuristic spires that hadn't been built. Yet, the sky above shifted between clear blue, smoggy gray, and the star-filled void of space where Earth's atmosphere had been stripped away by some future catastrophe. She walked through the chaos, her consciousness somehow maintaining coherence. Despite the temporal storm raging around her, people moved past her, some solid, others translucent, all of them living lives that existed in different streams of time. She saw Native Americans hunting buffalo, Victorian ladies in elaborate dresses, and humans in environmental suits who had adapted to a world where the air itself had become toxic. But there was something else. A thread of consistency running through all the chaos. A small park, always in the same location, regardless of which timeline she observed. The trees changed, sometimes oak, sometimes pine, sometimes strange hybrid plants that glowed with bioluminescent light, but the park itself remained constant. And at its center, a single bench where a child sat in every timeline. Elena approached carefully, not wanting to disturb the delicate balance of the temporal storm. As she drew closer, she could see that the child was indeed a girl, perhaps 8 years old, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of infinite possibilities. But her face was different in each timeline. Sometimes she appeared Asian, sometimes African, sometimes European, as if her very identity was fluid across the streams of time. "You're the one," Elena said softly. "You're the source." The child looked up, and Elena saw something that made her heart skip. Despite the shifting features, the girl's expression was the same in every timeline, a mixture of wonder and sadness that spoke of a soul carrying a burden too heavy for such young shoulders. "I didn't mean to break everything," the girl whispered, and her voice echoed across all timelines simultaneously. "I just wanted to make it better." Elena knelt beside the bench, careful not to disturb the temporal equilibrium. "What did you say? What word started all this?" The girl's eyes filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds in the fractured light. I said ... I said hope." The word resonated through the temporal storm, and Elena felt the fracture lines pulse. With renewed energy, she began to understand. This child, in some moment of pure human emotion, had spoken a word with such conviction, such desperate faith in the possibility of a better future, that it had literally rewritten the quantum structure of reality itself. Hope, Elena repeated, and she felt the truth of it in her bones. You hoped so hard for something better that you fractured time itself. The girl nodded, new tears streaming down her face. I saw all the bad things. All the wars and the sadness and the people who couldn't love each other. I just wanted to make it different. I wanted to give everyone a chance to try again. Elena felt her own eyes growing wet. Here was the essence of humanity distilled into its purest form, a child's unwavering belief that things could be better, that love could triumph over hatred, that hope itself could reshape the universe. Elena reached out slowly, her hand trembling as she extended it toward the girl. The moment their fingers touched, the temporal storm intensified, and she found herself experiencing every possible version of human history simultaneously. She saw the rise and fall of empires, the birth of art and science, the first tentative steps toward the stars. But threading through it all was the same pattern: humans refusing to surrender, choosing hope over despair, finding ways to love and create even in the darkest times. What's your name? Elena asked, her voice somehow carrying across the cacophony of collapsed timelines. I'm all of them, the girl replied, her form flickering between countless identities. I'm every child who ever wished for a better world. Every dreamer who refused to accept that things had to stay the same. Elena nodded, understanding flooding through her. The girl wasn't just one person, she was humanity's collective spirit of hope made manifest. The temporal fracture hadn't been caused by a single child's wish, but by the accumulated weight of every human who had ever dared to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. The Cronus Collective, Elena said, remembering Dr. Vex and his team. They're caught in the fracture too. Billions of beings across the galaxy, all trapped in this loop. The girl's expression grew more serious, and Elena saw flashes of the alien worlds caught in the temporal storm. The crystalline cities of the collective's homeworld flickered between states of construction and ruin. The peaceful meadows of the Terran colonies shifted between lush gardens and barren wastelands. Each world experienced its own recursive history, forever cycling through the same moments without resolution. I know, the girl whispered. I can feel them all. Their hopes, their fears, their love for each other. Did you know that Dr. Vex has 16 grandchildren? He teaches them about the stars every night, telling them stories about the day the collective first met humans. Elena's heart clenched. The thought of Dr. Vex's family, trapped in an endless loop of temporal chaos, made her more determined than ever to find a solution. There has to be a way to fix this without destroying the hope that created it, she said. Hope isn't something to be contained or eliminated, it's what makes us who we are. The girl smiled, and for a moment, her face stabilized into a single form, one that Elena recognized from old photos in her grandmother's house. It was the face of a child who had lived through humanity's darkest hour and still believed in the dawn. You understand, the girl said. Hope isn't the problem. The problem is that I tried to hope alone. Hope is supposed to be shared. Elena felt pieces clicking into place. The quantum resonance. Your hope was so powerful, it overwhelmed the timeline because it was concentrated in a single point. But if we could distribute it across every being in the galaxy, the girl finished. Not just humans, but the collective, the Terrans, everyone. If we all hoped together, the timeline wouldn't fracture, it would simply become more flexible, more willing to accept positive change. The solution was elegant and terrifying. Elena would need to become a conduit, channeling the girl's hope energy and redistributing it across every conscious mind in the galaxy. But the process would require her to maintain her coherence while experiencing the hopes and dreams of trillions of beings simultaneously. I'll do it, Elena said without hesitation. But I need you to help me. I need you to teach me how to hope the way you do, not just for myself, but for everyone. The girl took Elena's hand in both of hers, and suddenly, Elena could feel it, the vast network of consciousness that connected every living being in the galaxy. She felt Dr. Vex's quiet pride in his work, the Terran farmers' satisfaction in their growing crops, the joy of collective children playing in their crystal gardens. It was overwhelming and beautiful and perfectly, utterly human in its scope. Hope, the girl said again, and this time the word carried not just her voice, but Elena's as well. Hope for all of us. The temporal storm began to shift, the chaotic energy finding new patterns as Elena opened herself to become a living transmission node. She felt her consciousness expanding, reaching out through the fracture lines to touch every mind caught in the temporal loop. The process was excruciating, like trying to hold the ocean in a teacup, but she held on, driven by the same stubborn human refusal to surrender that had always defined her species. Almost there, the girl encouraged. Just a little more. Show them what hope looks like when it's shared. Elena gritted her teeth and pushed harder, feeling her individual self beginning to dissolve into the greater network of consciousness. But instead of fear, she felt only joy. This was what it meant to be human, to sacrifice the self for the greater good, to choose love over fear, to believe in impossible things until they became possible. The transformation rippled outward from Elena's consciousness like waves on a cosmic pond. She felt herself becoming something larger than human, yet more human than she had ever been. Through the quantum network, she experienced the moment of understanding as it reached each trapped mind across the galaxy. Dr. Vex was the first to comprehend what was happening. In his laboratory on the collective's homeworld, he felt the touch of Elena's expanded consciousness and immediately understood the solution. Hope wasn't humanity's alone, it was the universal force that drove all conscious beings to strive for something better. The collective had always had it. They had simply called it by different names. Remarkable, he whispered, his 4 eyes wide with wonder. Captain Moss, you're not just redistributing the temporal energy, you're teaching us to hope in harmony. Elena felt his amazement echo through the network, adding to the growing chorus of shared optimism. The Terran colonies joined next, their farmers and engineers and artists suddenly understanding that their individual dreams of a better future were part of a vast, interconnected tapestry of aspiration. But it was the children who responded most powerfully. Across 1,000 worlds, young minds lit up with the recognition that they were not alone in their belief that things could be better. Elena felt their joy cascade through the network, amplifying the hope energy and stabilizing the timeline in ways she hadn't expected. It's working, the girl beside her said, her form now solid and radiant. But Elena, you need to let go. You're trying to control the process, but hope works best when it's free. Elena realized the girl was right. She had been attempting to direct the flow of hope energy, to guide it towards specific outcomes. But hope, by its very nature, was about trust in the unknown, faith in possibilities not yet seen. She took a deep breath and released her grip on the network, allowing the collective hope of the galaxy to find its own expression. The results were immediate and miraculous. The temporal fracture began to heal, but not by reverting to the original timeline. Instead, it stabilized into something new, a reality, where the accumulated hopes and dreams of every conscious being had subtly reshaped the possibilities of existence itself. Elena watched through the network as the changes manifested. Wars that had seemed inevitable suddenly found peaceful resolutions as diplomats on both sides were inspired by unexpected moments of empathy. Scientific breakthroughs that had been decades away happened overnight as researchers across the galaxy simultaneously grasped the same insights. Acts of kindness multiplied exponentially as beings who had never met felt connected by their shared capacity for hope. "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" Elena asked the girl. "Not to change the past, but to open up new futures." The girl nodded, her smile bright enough to illuminate the healing fracture around them. Every species in the galaxy has the capacity for hope, but humans were the first to hope for others as much as for themselves. That's what made your species special, not that you were the only ones who could hope, but that you hoped for everyone. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she began to understand the full scope of what had happened. The temporal fracture hadn't been a disaster, it had been evolution. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't technology or art or even courage. It was the demonstration that hope could be shared, multiplied, and used to build connections across impossible distances. The timeline is stabilizing, Dr. Vex reported through the network, his voice filled with wonder. But it's not returning to its original configuration. We're seeing probability cascades that shouldn't be possible. It's as if reality itself has become more optimistic. Elena laughed, a sound that echoed across the healing fracture. That's exactly what's happened. We've infected the universe with hope. The girl began to fade, her purpose fulfilled. But before she disappeared entirely, she pressed something into Elena's hand, a small crystal that pulsed with warm light. "This is for you," she said. "A reminder that hope is always available, no matter how dark things seem. And Elena, thank you for helping me learn that the best hopes are the ones we share." Elena closed her fingers around the crystal, feeling its warmth spread through her palm. Around her, the temporal storm was settling into peaceful currents, and she could sense the portal back to the temporal observatory opening nearby. But before she left, she reached out through the network one more time, touching every mind that had shared in this moment of transformation. To Dr. Vex and his grandchildren, to the Terran farmers and their growing crops, to the collective children playing in their crystal gardens, she sent a single message: "Hope well, my friends. The universe is listening." Elena materialized in the temporal observatory's insertion chamber, her body intact but fundamentally changed. The sensors showed normal vital signs, but Dr. Vex could see something different in her eyes, a depth that spoke of having touched the infinite and returned with gifts. "Captain," he said, helping her sit up, "the readings are extraordinary. The temporal fracture has not only healed, but has left the timeline more stable than before." "How is this possible?" Elena smiled, her hand instinctively moving to the crystal the girl had given her. It was no longer glowing, but she could feel its warmth, a constant reminder of the connection that now existed between every conscious being in the galaxy. "We learned something, Dr. Vex," she said, her voice carrying new harmonics that resonated in the quantum foam around them. "Hope isn't just a human emotion, it's a fundamental force of consciousness. And when it's shared, it doesn't just change minds, it changes reality itself." The viewing portal showed the galaxy as it now existed, and the changes were subtle but profound. Trade routes that had been established through careful negotiation now seemed to flow naturally, as if the universe itself was cooperating. Conflicts that had raged for generations were resolving through unexpected acts of compassion. Scientific collaboration between species had accelerated dramatically, with breakthroughs happening at a rate that should have been impossible. "The probability matrices have shifted," Dr. Vane reported from his station. "Positive outcomes are now statistically favored across multiple sectors. It's as if the universe has developed a preference for hope." Elena nodded, understanding what the instruments couldn't quite capture. The network of shared hope hadn't just prevented a temporal catastrophe, it had created a new kind of reality, one where the collective optimism of conscious beings had become a force of nature. "There's something else," she said, standing and moving to the viewing portal. The girl, the source of the original fracture, she wasn't just one child. She was the manifestation of something that exists in every species, every world, every consciousness. The capacity to believe that things can be better. Dr. Vex joined her at the portal, his four eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of stabilized time. "And now that capacity is connected. Every being in the galaxy can draw on the hope of every other being. Exactly, Elena confirmed. But it's not just about sharing hope. It's about learning to hope together. The collective's methodical optimism, humanity's stubborn faith, the Terran's patient cultivation of better futures. When we combine these different approaches to hope, we create something stronger than any single species could achieve alone. The communication system crackled to life, carrying messages from across the galaxy. Reports were coming in of spontaneous cooperative projects, unexpected diplomatic breakthroughs, and scientific discoveries that seemed to emerge from thin air. The shared network of hope was already producing results that would have taken centuries to achieve through conventional means. "Captain," Dr. Vex said quietly, "what you've done here, sharing hope itself as a resource, it's going to change everything. The collective's philosophers have theorized about it for millennia, but no one believed it was possible." Elena turned to face her friend, seeing in his expression the same wonder she felt in her own heart. That's what makes humans special, isn't it? We don't just believe in impossible things, we make them possible. And now we've taught the universe to do the same. The crystal in her hand pulsed once, as if responding to her words. Elena understood that it was more than just a memento, it was a seed, a way to plant hope in places where it had never grown before. She had a feeling that this was just the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure, teaching the universe to hope. "Dr. Vex," she said, looking out at the transformed galaxy, "I think we're going to need a bigger observatory. If we're going to monitor a universe that's learned to hope, we're going to need instruments that can measure dreams." The alien scientist's skin shifted to a warm golden hue, the color of profound joy among his species. "Captain, I believe that's exactly the kind of impossible project that humans excel at. Shall we begin?" Elena smiled, feeling the network of hope pulse around them like a heartbeat that connected every star in the galaxy. "Let's build something wonderful." Outside the observatory, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe had finally learned to smile. And in the quantum foam that underlies all reality, a child's whispered word continued to echo, carrying the promise that tomorrow could always be better than today, that the timeline had been broken by hope, healed by hope, and transformed by hope. And in that transformation, humanity had given the galaxy its greatest gift, the knowledge that hope, when shared, could literally reshape the fabric of existence itself. The universe would never be the same. And that, Elena knew, was exactly as it should be.